Hey, welcome to the WoCo Tech Summit. I'm excited to have you here. My name is Brian Cook, and I'm the District Instructional Technology and Innovation Coach here in Worcester County Public Schools. And today, I'm going to walk you through the creation of a math lesson. But sometimes when you're doing the same math lesson over and over, it kind of gets a little like, not as exciting. And I say this sometimes, you got to change things up a bit. So we're going to walk through a short lesson originated kind of in the Orgo world, but we created it in Keynote. So I'm just going to walk through the look of it right now, show you what it is. Then I'm going to actually show you how to create it. So let's take a look. Is our overview, or as I like to call it, our model slide. We're showcasing the algorithm for 2 or 3-digit numbers. And what you have is your model page. And I say this is a model page where we can go through, ask kids, what do you see? What do you notice? And we can talk through some of these things. We have a little bit of a workspace over here on our right. When we're talking about some numbers, if we want to jump back over and kind of model a little bit with our our blocks, we have that ability. And after we work on our problem here, we can even have this little cool like check erase where kids can take their Apple pencils and kind of go to the draw tool and take erase that and actually see what the real answer is. Almost like a scratch off, maybe like a scratch off lottery ticket if you want to think of it in that way. But anyway, that's our model page. Next, we go into our active activity. And this is an opportunity where you can't see it right now, but these pieces up top is actually a media placeholder where kids can roll a die and actually take a picture with right in the Keynote where they just tap the camera and they rock and roll with it. Then what happens is I always like nonverbal cues. So we have down here a little pencil logo, and that just tells kids, hey, we're going to be writing too. So we're going to be taking photos and we're going to be also writing on the same slide. But now that we have our numbers, we need a workspace. So what we were able to do in this particular one, we took our numbers from the previous. So let's just say the number was 86. So an 8 and a 6. So we went with our bigger, we'd put our 8 and then a 6 on top. The smallest, we'd flip it, 6 and an 8. Then we would actually have kids do the addition in the 10s and the 1s columns and come up with their response. Once we kind of walk through that little piece and make it a little bit more challenging, what we decided to do was to go through and challenge them to do it on their own, kind of like independent practice if you want to look at it. So if I move myself over on the other side, we gave them some numbers already. If you notice this, camera picture, same idea. We're going to be back with our dice, and they're going to be able to roll to make their own numbers. So not every kid in the class is going to have the same answer, and that's perfectly okay. So they'll be able to take the photo. They'll also notice we have this logo at the bottom, letting kids know that we're going to be working with our drawing tools. They'll be able to go through and do their standard addition. And I say this, we created this in our design so that kids could bring this back and maybe do it more than one time, because if you roll the dice and you have different numbers every time, it'll change. At the conclusion of it, what we did was we created an exit ticket, just kind of like if you think of a the red light green light type of idea, like, hey, I got it, hey, I got it, but I need more practice, or I'm totally confused. Can easily be adaptable to your own terminology in your class. At the end of it, we also have a media placeholder set up right here. And you'll notice where it kind of has that arrow point. That will eventually be a plus button where kids can actually record and do a reflection on what worked and what didn't work for them. So that's the short overview. Now let's get started. And how do I actually create this for my class? Let's get started. Let's first start off going down here to our Keynote. We have the original right there, but we're starting from scratch a little bit today just because we want to make sure that we have a fresh start. So we're going to choose our theme. I always love starting with a blank canvas because that gives me all the ability to kind of start fresh. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually delete everything off of there. And I'm going to go fairly quickly through this, but it's okay because you have the ability to pause. So what I'm going to do is before I start, I'm going to tap on my white background. I'm going to give it something a little bit different. I love by going to the Paintbrush, tapping on there. I love gradient backgrounds. Well, maybe not that one though. But what we'll do is we will go through and give it a color. There we go. Something a little fresh. Just to kind of get started, one of the things that I always love, I want to go through and add some shapes, hit my plus sign. I'm going to go over here to my search, give it a little bit of pencil. Love this look. I'm gonna kind of pump this up a little bit because every good school, what I can do is I can actually do a rotation on this, and I have a little bit of struggle, so I'll do my my paintbrush. I'm going to go through here to my arrange. What I'm going to do here, I'm actually going to rotate this so the pencil is 90 degrees. I believe I actually have it the other way around. So I'm going to kind of move this up here, make it a little bit spacious. No kid has ever used a black pencil. It just doesn't normally work. Usually we have some yellow in there. So I'm going to actually fix that up. I'm going to go back to my paintbrush. I'm going to go into my arrange, break apart. What that did was it gave me all these as like separate pieces. So now I'm going to go to my middle. If you want to think of paintbrush, always think of the paintbrush as this idea of changing the color. I'm going to go down here to this component, kind of work on that color piece real quick. So let's go through, maybe we'll give it like a kind of a tannish look. I'll make a little bit of gray right there. And of course, the top of our pencil or eraser is always going to be a pink. Looking at that, what I want to do to make sure I don't mess anything up, I'm going to highlight it all again. Go back to my paintbrush. Back to my paintbrush. I'm going to arrange, but this time what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to group them all together one more time. And now I have my pencil. But you know, as I'm looking at that, it looks just a tad different than the first time around. I think that's because I rotated it the wrong way, but that's okay. Yeah, just rotate that one more time. There we go. So one thing that's really cool about shapes is each one individually kind of has its own text box. So I can just say Dr. Cook, but the reality of it is I flipped it. So to make it easier, we'll just actually create a text box in there. So once we get the text box, that's super, super little, put it right there in the middle. We're going to tap on it, and we'll say Dr. Cook. All right, beautiful. However, we need to make that a little bit bigger. So once again, going back to that, paintbrush, changing the color. As always, you're gonna pump it up a little bit. We'll just maybe make that simpler, maybe put that like 45. Right, I'm teaching a little bit of math class today. All right, so one thing that I always like to do, I like to go through and really support this idea that like copy and paste as much as you can. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that, I'm going to copy, try that again. I'm going to go through, I'm actually going to copy it, I'm going to put my directions right here for kids to know. I'm going to say, yay, math. Right. All right. So as we go through our next step, if you looked at the previous one, we're actually going to go through. We're going to add a small graph on there. So we hit our plus sign, came over to our graph. We're actually going to keep this really simple. A lot of people see this like, oh dear, how do I change this? Go over those like 2 lines. We're going to put our finger on that. We're actually going to crank it down to like a more of a 3 by 3. Same on this side. And what we're going to do, we're actually going to just take it from the corner, just kind of readjust that a little bit. And I say this, you'll kind of move it around. So I'm just kind of recreating a little bit of what we did. Run some of our numbers from the first time. Right, so we have our numbers in there. Once again, we kind of have to tweak a couple of the phrases, which I say this, super easy to do with a copy and paste on this side. Super, like I said, doesn't take a ton of time, but just a little bit of practice to get everything where it needs to be. So one thing I always say, try to tweak this to your school. So I happen to say Snow Hill Elementary here, but I mean, if you're at Ocean City or Pittsville or wherever it is you work, absolutely change that to meet your school. So anyway, go in my paintbrush. I'm going to actually align this to the left because I don't like how it sits in the middle. One of the things that we can do here is we can kind of move this up. And one thing that you'll take a notice that I love the emoji in there. I love nonverbal cues. So if I look at my previous work that I might have done, some people have asked me in the past, hey Brian, where have you found this little like piece right here? And honestly, I copied off of something I saw that somebody else did. I can't say that I've ever used it, but if you really want it, I'm going to give you this template in the end. But I love this graphic because it just gives kids that visual, like, hey, you will be using these tools. One other thing I wanted to show is when we go through and create our base 10 blocks, all the base 10 block is really a plus sign and a shape that's resized down to a small block and moved. I say this, it's probably the most tedious piece of it. So what I'm going to do for our time purposes, I have gone through and like created this in another document at one time in life, so I copy and paste this because it's one of those things I only want to create once. So I'm actually going to paste it into the other document just so we can kind of move a little bit faster. But if you ever want to do this, or like, hey Brian, can I have that document that you have created some of those math manipulatives in for Keynote? And I will say absolutely, you can totally borrow them, because it is the one that I will say is normally the biggest challenge to create. So, like I said, always willing to share great ideas that I see, because I say this, I see a lot, and sometimes they're mine, sometimes they're a combination of mine and other people who I've seen do some work other places. So, like I said, definitely a sharer, and love to show any of you guys if you want to take a look at it. Anyway, that's how I got the base 10 blocks in super fast. We're going to get that one out of the way from previously. So one thing that I always tell with kids, like if you want kids to manipulate stuff, that's great. But this stuff here, once I get to the lesson, I do not want them to touch it. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to do a lock in place so they cannot do it. So I'm going to show you a lock real quick. You just highlight over them. Notice I've highlighted everything. Go up to my paintbrush. From there, I'm going to go down to my lock, because I don't actually have kids working on that here. What I do is I have them actually, actually like write on it, so there's no movement. So once again, I'm still going to keep going back over here, copy and pasting some of the stuff that we did, because why reinvent? So what I'm going to build now is that little workspace. So here's how I calculated the number of people attending Monday. So like most things, when I find things that are going to be specific to me, that I'm going to be modeling, I'd like to go through and change the font. So I'm going to just change that lightly, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to my paintbrush. I'm on my text. We're going to move that into like a white. We might even do make sure it's bolded. Left justify, just so people know. And what I like to do is I like to crank that up just a little bit, because I think that's really good to and the reason I say that, when you crank up the text, you're telling kids like, hey, guess what? This is super important. Like, I'm going to be using this, so I want to make sure that you know where we're at. So the next thing I want to do is kind of make that workspace. The neat thing about this is if the workspace isn't big enough for you, you can always go back through and just kind of recreate the size. So let's go through if you can make it bigger or smaller. I'm going to hit my plus sign, hit my box. I'm just going to kind of rework that through the screen a little bit to meet what I need. It doesn't have to be huge, but it does have to be, I always say this, bright colors are great for kids. Hit my paintbrush again, we'll change style. I'm going to go with more of a gradient look. Ooh, presets. We'll go with that one. Cool. So now we have that space a little bit. One thing that I love more than anything else at the bottom is I love the "Are you right?" thing. I love kids being able to check their own work. So I think we need to kind of really focus on that. Am I right? Let's check. So let's move this down just a hair. Actually, we're going to take this first part and kind of crank this down just about 40, maybe less than that. So what you're going to notice on the bottom was we kind of had that, we had that like almost like that scratch off look. So how do we create that? So really cool thing to do. First off, we have to go through and actually get the answer of what our question is going to be. So just because I have done this at one point in my life, I'm pretty confident I know that eventually the answer will be 122 when we model it. So we got to actually write that in there individually. Sometimes the default's so gray. I want to move it to black. So I know when kids actually go through and use this, that's the answer I want them to find. So what I'm going to do before anything, once I have it there, I'm going to hit my paintbrush. I'm going to arrange it. I'm actually going to lock that. I don't want them to move that. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go through. I'm going to get a shape to kind of cover over top of that. And I'm going to show you guys, I don't necessarily think it's magic, but definitely a step that you can do that will help kind of view what this looks like. So here's what I tell people. I'm going to take my round shape right here. Okay, I'm going to move it right over top, kind of make it that size. And you have to do a couple steps here. So first off, go up to my paintbrush, go to my style. I'm actually going to fill this with no fill. And people are like, no fill, that doesn't make sense. Just trust me. Then I'm going to go over to back to my style. I'm going to put a border on it. But I'm going to crank this border up to like a pretty decent size, maybe 10 or 15, maybe even 20. We'll put it on there. So now it kind of looks like what we had. So how do we create that kind of that scratch off look? So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go up to my plus sign. I'm going to actually go into my draw tool. Okay. So once you get here, well, the color I want is pink. So I'm going to have to find a pink, which that looks about right. I'm going to go in right here. I'm going to change that color to pink. And what I'm going to do is with my pen, I'm going to kind of just go right over that. Notice I'm in the middle of the black. Doesn't have to be perfect. Just has to be behind it. And now I'm going to do like, I'm going to have that, and you're going to like, wow, that's really ugly. That's a mess. So what we're going to do is we're going to layer that. So if you want to think of like a layer, and I'll show it to you one more time, just in case. We're going to go through here with our pink. Oh, you know what? I'm going to undo that. I think I went a little outside the lines, or inside the lines. So as long as you stay in the black, you're in good shape. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to zoom in here a little bit for you guys to see. Think of this as 3 layers. The back layer is going to be the number. The middle layer is going to be the pink. Then the layer on top is going to be the black square that has like the no fill. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to tap on my pink that I did. Okay, so let me get into something else. Tap on the pink. Now I'm going to go back up into my paintbrush. What I'm going to do is right here on the arrange, I'm going to pay real close attention. I'm just going to go back. If you notice that, see how that I went back? I know it's kind of hard because it's being hidden a little bit. I just went back one. Now it looks nice and neat, but guess what? I still have that problem. That number just came through, and I can't have that. So what I need to do is I'm going to go back into this one more time and make sure that number. Okay. See, we have these 3 layers, just as we said before. Okay. So we're going to kind of just go back and what those look like one more time. So what we're going to have is the one that has to be on top. Oh, let me move this out of the way. Go back to my numbers. We're going to lock it, leave it all the way in the back. So I'm going to unlock it. Before I do anything else with that, I'm going to actually arrange that, make sure that's the very last one, all the way in the bottom. Okay. Now let's put these back into place. Adjust these accordingly. I have to move that one in just a hair. So made a little mistake on the far right outside, but hey, it's not the end of the world. What I can do is I can actually clip that part of it and delete. No, I can't. Oh, you know what I could do? I could just take my erase tool, get rid of it there. So anyway, now that we have this here, the one thing I tell folks to do, actually take the black outline. So if you want to think of it, that's the one that we have to lock in place. So sometimes I even move it. I'm going to go up in here. I'm actually going to lock it. So now when kids are here, they're going to just literally take their tool right here, go to their drawings. Once they hit the erase, they can kind of just erase and like, oh wow, there's the answer. Kind of a really cool thing for kids. But anyway, real quick overview, that's how we created the first page. So one thing I tell folks, anything that you don't need kids to manipulate or touch, lock it all down. So in this page, I literally am going to take almost everything and lock it down. The only thing I don't want entirely locked down, honestly, is that pink part. And that's because I want them to be able to do it. So notice I have all the things marked at the same time. I'm also going to tap on my workspace. Once I have all that, I'm going to hit my lock button. I might even unlock it just so I can lock them all at one time so the kids can't move it around. So that's how we make the first page. All right, let's get working on the next slide. Whenever I know I have slides I want kids to be able to work on, and maybe multiple times, I always want to do this in the slide layout, because normally when you hit the plus sign, you get all this stuff. How cool would it be to have your own stuff? So what I always tell people is I like to tap on the screen kind of off to the side, hit edit slide layout. One of the things I always do, is I will go through it and I will actually delete all the slides that they have. I wish I could like highlight them all at one time, but unfortunately it takes a little bit of time. So you have to actually go through and delete each of them, because I find this, the less sometimes you give with kids, the better chance that they won't make any mistakes. So I'm actually going to go through, delete some of these. One of the things I always say is I always take the first slide, and that's the one I'm going to work on. I leave a blank in there just in case out of nowhere I want to have like a work session or station, an idea. So anyway, I'm going to start here in the slide layout. I'm going to go back to my paintbrush. I'm going to stick with the same color idea that I had from before, kind of that funky teal looking gradient. And what I had here that I thought was really cool is I have kids that are going to roll with dice. So I'm going to go to my plus sign, go to my shapes. I'm going to grab my dice. And I know they're already there because I've used them before. I'm actually going to take both of those because notice they're actually two different dice. I don't like that black look. I'm going to actually change that a little bit real quick to my plus sign, change the style. We're going to change the fill of those to white. Just think it looks a little bit better on the screen. I'm going to try my best to get those centered. So the neat thing about it is I know I'm on that right line. It'll come there. I move them around a little bit. Ooh. So as those are moved, one of the things that you notice on top, we have a thing called a media placeholder. I'm going to walk through the steps to make that. So I'm going to hit my plus sign. I'm actually just going to get a square. And what's going to happen here is this is where the spot where I'm actually going to have my students roll the dice and take a picture of it. So it's a real simple task to do. Some people think like, oh my gosh, it looks big. It's challenging. Let's look at it now. We have a square. We're going to continue to build on it. I like nonverbal cues. So one of the things that I like to do is I like the kids to know, like if they're going to take a picture of something, like we're going to have a picture of a camera there. Now, notice when I did that, I lost the look of it. So I'm going to just actually change the color of it. Obviously, the white will pop really easy on here. Might make it a little bit bigger there. Put it right there in the center. Just for a little bit of color, I'm going to actually give it a background. So I'm going to hit my paintbrush again. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go to my border over here. I might give myself a border. I'm going to maybe get like a white color so it sticks out a little bit. It might sound a little silly when I say this, but the only way you can do a media placeholder is if you bring a picture in. So people are like, oh, well, that's a shape. Is that the same? It's not. So you're going to see something really simple. I'm actually going to take a screenshot right now of that. And what I'm going to do is I'm literally just going to go through and crop it to meet the exact same dynamics. That's why I always tell folks sometimes it's good to have that border around it so you can see it. So you notice we're just going to go around real quick. Bottom border needs a little bit more space. Not the end of the world. I can always bring a border back in. But anyway, I'm going to click done, save the photos. And what I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to go back in here again. I'm going to hit my plus sign, go into my pictures. I'm literally going to bring that same picture right back in. Now, what I'll do with my old one is just take it and I'm going to move it to the... I'm not going to delete it entirely because I'm going to use it again. I'm going to move it down here. I'm going to come right up here. I'm going to make this a little bit bigger. Once again, I lost a little bit of my my border, so I might even put the border back on there again, just to make sure. I'll pump that up just a hair so people can see it. And what I'm going to do now, this is probably the most important step. I'm going to tap on it, the picture, then I'm going to go up to my paintbrush. I'm going to go to this image one in the middle, and I'm going to go down here and make sure I did that right. Oh, nope, I lied. I'm sorry. The style. Down here, define as media placeholder. And notice when I did that, a plus sign appeared. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to literally copy that. I'm going to paste it because I don't want to do those steps more than once. Kind of a, not that they were hard, but they're time consuming. And we're always looking for ways to, fix things. And you're going to say, why that media placeholder? And when I tap on that plus sign, it's going to automatically push me to this take photo. And you're going to see exactly why here in a minute when I show you the model. So now what am I going to do with this box down here? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to literally leave it right here. But the difference is I want kids to write in there eventually. So I'm just going to change the colors around, change my fill to a white. Then I'm going to go back to my border. I'm just going to change my border, kind of invert it just a hair. So kids have, a little bit of space. From there, I'm going to copy and I'm going to paste to give kids 2 spaces so they can write. Once again, I'm all about those nonverbal cues of what kids can do. So I'm going to actually get a pencil, maybe a pen. So let me think here. I might Maybe I did the pencil before. But anyway, maybe something along this. I say this sometimes when you build some of these, you grab images from places that you found before. And I'm going to say here, I have a graphic over here I like to use. I can't remember where I ever got it from, but just in case, I'm going to go over here to this piece. You may want to borrow some things, you may not, from other pieces of work that you've done before. But I might even take, maybe you can even take that one just to have a visualization. Oh, maybe I can just copy it from there. Anyway, I know I had it somewhere around here. There we go. And I like that just to sit there because I don't want kids to really play with it. So the neat thing when you do a media placeholder, this is locked. They can't change this around too much, which is great. But what we're going to do is we're going to know that the bottom pieces we don't want to be moved. So hit our paintbrush again. We're going to lock. We don't lock the top ones because we eventually want kids to work there. So you might say, well, what do I do now? Wow, that's really strange. So I say this all the time. You kind of have to go through, and what I'm going to do, I'm going to actually duplicate the title slide. One thing that you should always do, never actually work on the main slide. That was my own mistake, so I might have to go back through and just make a copy and delete it. Not a big deal. So let me just go back to my title slide and delete from there. Change this first one back to the original pre-color set. There we go. So anyway, so I don't mess any of this up. Again, and I say this is again your individual non-slide, meaning it's not one of the originals. So anyway, where did it go? So one of the things you can do is hit the plus sign now, and that's going to come in there all the time. Now, when you saw that, it said title copy, like kids are going to be thrown off by that. So what I might do is I might actually go through and like reword that. People are like, well, how do you reword it? Literally, you can kind of just rename it. Maybe I would call this my dice slide. So anyway, so when kids are here, and what I'm going to do is I'm actually hit that plus sign, hit take photo or video. If you're looking on my desk, right here, on my dice, go through, take my photo of my 5, click on my use. Now kids will kind of have like a different way to engage, and what they'll have is their actual slide. So anyway, real quick, that's the next slide. All right, welcome back. We're going to hit our workspace. So once again, I'm just going to tap on here. I'm going to go into my edit slide piece because I think it's super important, because what I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to go through and I'm going to use that blank slide, but sometimes I like just duplicate it. So I'm going to keep that blank. And what this is going to be is this is going to be my workspace slide. So I'm going to just rename it workspace. So once again, I'm going to first start off with the color combination, get that to match what I had before, because I want kids to kind of get that recognition. So what this is really just space for kids to work. So I'm going to go back in. It's a bunch of squares that kind of meet kids' needs. But let's make that like a white space, because we know kids are going to be writing on here, and we want them to be able to use whatever colors that they want. So I'm going to just kind of make this a real big workspace for kiddos. And we'll label what we want in each of these in a moment. So this is going to be the major space where they work at. So we know we're going to have to lock this. So what we're going to do is hit that paintbrush, hit arrange, hit lock. What we're going to do is we're going to set a few things on top of it. So hit our plus sign. We're going to add, some lines in here. People are like, oh, like, that's kind of cool. So one thing, since a lot of Worcester people have keyboards, if you hold the shift key, it will make sure that it stays straight. A little bit easier. So once you have that, we're just going to go into your paintbrush. Same idea we might have done before. Just going to crank this baby up a little bit to make it a little bit bigger width and style. And literally, you're just kind of creating a space for kids to work. Like anything, copy and paste some of these to make it a little bit easier on yourself. I say this, this can be used for 2-digit, 3-digit, whatever it is that you're really looking for. So I'm going to put it right here in the middle. Try to the best of my ability. just to meet. So if you think about like the spaces that kids have to work. One thing I will say, just to kind of follow, because I pulled this from an Orgo lesson, I just want the width of the line to kind of match. So I'm going to just crank those down just a hair. One thing I'm going to continue to do, I'm going to grab my text box, and in there I kind of want to just show kids like, hey, this is going to be the 10 spot. So I might just put a T there, make that a little bit darker so they can see it. Crank that up a little bit to maybe 45. All right, so they know what that is. What we're going to do is we're going to copy and paste that. It's going to be the 1 spot. And we're going to highlight both of these, and we're actually going to make sure that we have some space here at the top. So what I'm going to do is actually take our spaces and just crank them a little bit farther down. And the reason that is, I want to be able to put a heading at the top a little bit, just so I can tell kids, hey, we're doing addition here. So this is all the little stuff that just takes a little bit of time. Comfortably, the more particular you are, the more that you're going to be onto it. So since I'm in a shape, you can actually have a text box in a shape. So I'm going to type in the word addition, ADDITION. Unfortunately, that's in the wrong white font. So we might just change that to a black font. Right now it's in the middle of the page. Let's move it to the top of the page. Yep, beautiful. Well, same idea. We're going to crank it up so kids can see it a little bit easier. Obviously, try to go a little bit bigger than what you did before. But yeah, so you have this idea. Now that we have all this, I'm just going to literally copy and paste it. I have all the same look. The difference is I'm going to go through. I think I changed this to biggest. The other one is smallest. One of the things I did in the last one, instead of having the text at the top, you can have it at the bottom. So all you do is do your paintbrush, move back to the bottom. And honestly, this is just like preference stuff for you to do. Once you think like you got it set, the reality of it is, oh, you know what I forget? Sorry, I need a plus sign. Plus. So just kind of throw that over there to the side. Make that as big or small as you want. Anyway, going back to this, one thing I tell people, none of this is going to move. The kids are going to be writing on this. I'm going to highlight it all, go back to my unlock it just so I can lock it all as a group again. But kids don't need to do anything with it. So now, say a kid's here, they're working, they can hit their own plus sign here on the bottom, and they can actually pick their own workspace. And say they want to work again and do like multiple ones, you have that ability to go back and forth again. So anyway, we're done with the 1, 2, 3rd slide, and we'll pause for a moment and go to. All right, now we're going to come to the 4th slide. I say this within slide 1, 2, and 3. I've gone through a lot of the steps. I'm not going to necessarily walk through this whole slide, but I'm just going to kind of come back through in case you want to see if you have any like particulars. All that we're doing here is we're going through, is this top part. All that is our rectangle. That's just a plus sign, actually a square, I'm sorry. And recreating the size, going through, typing in the font that you want, and kind of placing it the right way. So really a lot of that stuff that we have done. The one that's a little bit throws people off a little bit is right here. This is actually a chart. So that's a plus sign. And we're going to go over here to our charts, and I believe it's a 3 by, it's maybe a 3 by 4. So you can literally go in here just like we did before, crank this to your 1, 2, 3, 4. Same idea as we did before. What I did was I just went through and like focused on this color combination and moved it around. To move these, all you have to do is just go to the corner of your slide and actually just kind of get a hold of it so you can move it, stretch it to where you need. So if you will see kind of roughly what we did here, you want to stretch that to kind of meet that same look and desire. It takes a little bit of time of moving around. Once you get in there, like maybe I want that slide to have a specific color or a fill color, or you might even say, hey, you know what, I want like a white there, Or, hey, I know what my background color is going to be. Like, and I say this, I know I took just one of the generic gradients. You might be able to just take a gradient color and match it up there. But anyway, like I said, this slide here, very similar to some of the skills that we have already done. So we're not going to spend that whole time walking through it. But like I said, right here, all that is are your media placeholders. Same thing again, just side by side. That's your box. And this is really the kids' chance to kind of do it on their own. So that's a real quick part of slide 4. All right, we're back to that last slide. What I'm going to do is hit my plus sign. As we did before, I'm going to go through and just hit a blank copy in there. And what I'm going to do is, this is going to be like my last part. I'm going to call this my exit ticket. I always like sometimes have the exit ticket like be a little bit different than what we might have done before. So as I'm going through colors and trying to figure that out, I just try to get us an off color because I want them to be able to realize that, hey, this is something different. Yeah, let's change this to more of a green color maybe. Not quite the same green, but close enough. So what did I use to show that that like red, yellow, green light? What I'm going to do is just hit my plus sign, go into my shapes. I typed in light, or traffic light. There we go. Sorry, wrong one. So if you throw your traffic light in there, you notice that, hey, we have those green in the back. So all we have to do now is go into our shapes, add a color in. And what I'm going to do is I always like just cover it up. And I'm going to just hit my color or make that red. I'm actually going to copy and paste this so we have a couple of them in there. So we all know that yellow's in the middle. Find a yellow. We'll find a green, but just a little bit different green. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my actual, traffic light. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take my paintbrush. I'm actually going to rearrange that so that is up to front. So now it's hidden behind there. Now to make sure nothing happens when kids move it, I'm just going to take the whole thing, highlight it, hit my paintbrush. I'm going to group that together. Where's that? Groups right here, sorry. And now that's one object together. I've always used this like a 3-2-1 mentality. I say this candidly, if you use something else, don't use what I use what makes sense to you. I always did like, hey, I'm like, if I'm a 1, I'm my caps lock still on. I'm still very confused. And I say you can do 2. I think I got it. Here's 3. Maybe I got it. Like I said, you can pick a color, call it a number thing, whatever works for you. The last thing I like about this, I love doing a media placeholder to have kids kind of like, hey, I want to show you now. And normally people are like, oh, can you copy and paste the media placeholder? You probably could. I'm going to build one again, and the only reason that I'm going to build it again is because I want the kids to know that like I want them as the picture this time. People are like, oh, so I have the box again. Like we did before, I'm literally just going to kind of recreate this. I'm going to put a person or a silhouette of a person. So I just got to find it in there, person. Yeah. So we're going to just reset that person to a different color. Maybe do like an off gray just to kind of have that piece. One thing that I love is to zoom in here. Make a note here, click here. Or I say this, you can tell them to click here or just do have your reflect. And just say reflect. What did you like about this activity? What are you still struggling? Still, are you still struggling on? And I say this, you can change this question to whatever meets your needs, but I'm gonna go back to my paintbrush. I'm going to go to my text. I'm going to move this to the top. I might lower the size of this just a hair. And then I'm going to just put my silhouette of my person right here. And what I'm letting them know is like, hey, I want you to actually like see you. Sometimes, depending on how young of children you're working with, I will even go through and actually like add another piece in there. I'll kind of have an arrow facing a little bit. People are like, well, why would you do that? Just so kids know, like, hey, this is where I need you to click. So I'm going to change that arrow to something a little bit easier to see. So drag it on over here. Maybe you even set it off as something bright and color, just so kids won't miss it. Because that's the thing, you don't want kids saying, well, I didn't see it. Well, I definitely want to make sure that you did see it. So I'll just rotate that around again. And here's the thing, you don't want to hit the actual corner, just a little bit, like let kids know like, hey, I'm going generally there. And the reason that is because like that box will kind of move slightly. So I just want to let them know like that's where they're looking at, that corner down there. Because I want them to be able to eventually hit that plus button. So same idea as we did before. I'm going to actually take a screenshot of this. We're going to go through and just crop it to meet the same size. Click our done in the top right hand corner, save the photos. Now we're going to bring that screenshot back in because the only way we can do a media placeholder is through an actual video, not shapes. Beautiful. Now we can just take this stuff that we just made and delete it. Oop. Get that out of there. So just as a quick reminder for the folks in case they forgot, we're going to tap on the, once we have that tap, we'll tap on the paintbrush as always. Go to our image. Oh, did I make a mistake there? Oh, I'm sorry. Style. My apologies. Define as media placeholder. And you can actually tag the type of media. Normally, I just kind of let it sit there. Notice you now have that plus sign. Just for good looks, I always like to make it look a little nicer with a border. So I might throw a border on there. Maybe we can make it look like a picture of some sort. And there we go. Yeah, a little fancier. All right, so there we go. And now, I always say, what do you want kids not to move? These are things that are not being moved. So we are going to lock those pieces. We just don't want the kids necessarily move the media placeholder, but they have to interact with it. So if they have to interact with it, don't lock it. So now we're done. Now that kids are back here, hit the plus sign. We give them their exit ticket. Say they make a mistake or they, do whatever, they can always pull another one back up. So now we've walked through all the steps for this. I hope it was a good way for you to walk you through some Keynote, but also show you a cool math activity that's engaging and interactive. But more importantly, how do you share this? So that'll be our last. All right, we've made a beautiful piece. Now we're going to take this and assign it. So let's rename the file. We'll call this, oh, you know what? We are still in, maybe. Yeah, there we go. We're going to call this WoCo Tech Demo. There we go. So what I always tell people is I'm going to go to Schoolwork. So if you're thinking what Schoolwork is, it's a file system sharing tool where you can send stuff back and forth. So for the purpose of today, if you've never seen it, be amazed and wowed. Hit your plus new assignment. We'll call this our math activity. I'm going to go through and assign add activity. I'm going to actually just add this Keynote. And what happens when I do that is everybody will get their own copy of it. So as I go through, WoCo Tech Demo, I can pick the classes that I want it assigned to. I don't teach formal classes, but I do have a demo 2021. So I have my own children in there, but I'm going to actually just assign this to Demo 1 because that's my demo student iPad. Click on Done, but I could give it to the whole class. This is where you write some instructions. You have your I. it defaults to each kid has their own. You could, in theory, have every child in the classroom work on the same document. There are moments for that, but this is not one of them. So anyway, from there, we just go into publish and give it a few moments. It will publish to the child's device. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you a screenshot of what it looks like on the kid's side momentarily. All right, now that we're back on a student device, we're going to go into our Schoolwork app. Once you notice, that's a demo device, so we don't have formal classes, but we have some of our after school and demo purposes. So you're going to notice the math activity has loaded. So if I tap on it, I will click on my open button. That will normally be blue. Sometimes it's open because I was trying to make sure everything loaded through. Normally people ask me, how long does it take to actually get the file over to kids? I always say don't do it the second kids walk in. I always try to send this stuff out the day before, just so it has time to load on their devices. But anyway, I have my demo on there. Like most kids, if I want to go through and work through different pieces, I now have that ability to do that, and that's super exciting. So now that I have it, I can go through and work on my device as a kid, and as I do that, I have the ability to essentially send it back and forth. So if I would go into my plus sign again, and I would go into my draw component, so my plus drawing. So as I was telling you guys earlier, maybe I went through and did this piece of it. I do example, so we'll just call it 2 + 2. Anyway, once I'm done on the kid side, all I have to do is just hit this submit button in the top right hand corner, and what will happen is it will allow me to send it immediately right back to the teacher. So kind of a nice way to do it, and I'm excited to share it with you.